Yo, what is up everyone? Back here with another video. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down Ogerpon, one of the new legendaries added in the DLC, the Mass DLC specifically. So, this Pokemon's really interesting because it's been getting a lot of hype, obviously. You know, a lot of people have been kind of picking it up in the grassroots online tournaments right now. And I kind of wanted to just go over it and kind of give my thoughts on Ogerpon as a Pokemon in general and how good I think it is. Also, you know, each form, obviously, there's different forms of viability. So that also makes a difference as well. So, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, let me know. And let me know what you guys would like to see me talk about next. So, Ogerpon's really interesting because Ogerpon is a Pokemon that has 4 different forms essentially, and it's completely determined by its item, right? If it's item list, it's going to be Ogerpon Grass. If it has the Cornerstone mask, it's going to be a Grass Rock type. Then Fire type, if it's, or Grass Fire, if it's a Hearthflame mask. Wellspring mask is going to make it grass and water, and they all have different abilities associated with them. So I'll be telling you which ones I think are the best and like what niches I think they have. So basically each of them have their own individual strengths. I would say probably out of all of them, either the grass or the rock type are the least strong. I'd probably say the rock type is the least strong if I were thinking about it, because I feel like when you consider like what Ogerpon like Cornerstone does, like having sturdy, like sure, that's really cool, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it's like that good of an ability. And then when it goes for terrestrialize and just goes for all Ogerpons, they actually change their forms and get a certain boost, right? So the reason why I think Ogerpon Rock, I'm gonna cover this one first actually. So Ogerpon Rock is kind of like a little bit weaker in my opinion, because first off, like a Rock Terra is not exactly great in this current metagame. You have stuff like Urshifu, you have a lot of other Pokemon. Now granted, having a 100 accuracy Rock Stab through Ivy Cudgel, so if you guys don't know what Ivy Cudgel is, it's an exclusive move that Ogerpon gets that matches its mask. So for example, Cornerstone mask, it'll be 100 base power rock move. That's actually pretty sick because there's not really like any accurate rock moves, so having a really accurate rock type is really nice. The main issue comes down to just like, is what it's getting out of its typing and its boost like really what it needs, right? So for me, I feel like the rock is the most underpowered because it gets a defense boost, which while good, you know, a lot of the Pokemon that just crit through don't care. And then on top of that too, it's really weak to fighting type coverage. Iron Hands, Urshifu, like there's so many Pokemon that counter that type to where like it's not really that great, right? The nice thing is Ogerpon does get a variety of grass moves, even though you're running Ivy Cudgel as, you know, obviously your coverage move. So Wood Hammer, Power Whip, and then also Horn Leech if you prefer, you know, safety. And then it also gets access to Follow Me. So the one thing I could see being good about the Grass Rock version is like Follow Me with a defense boost could be kind of strong into certain Pokemon. I just feel like it really needs to like find a way to compensate for like the Iron Hands and Urshifu weakness, and that's like the main problem, right? Next up is the grass version. So this is like the default Ogerpon without, you know, anything else. You can put any item you want on it, which is really nice. So it doesn't require, you know, you to put a mask or anything on it. So that's kind of cool, right? Because even though the grass is arguably like the weaker of typing of the three, and you get less coverage, you still actually get a huge benefit off of the fact of one, having a really useful ability in my opinion, but two, also being able to run an item on it, right? So even Ogerpon stats are pretty decent. If you're running a good item on it, that's like fine too, right? Like for example, like I don't think Assault Vest would be it, but you could run like an Assault Vest with Defiant, right? The nice thing is too, the neutral grass typing, in my opinion, is a little bit better into the metagame than the rock typing anyways. Not being weak to fighting is really nice, and grass is like a fine defensive type in this format. The only drawback is obviously then when you're against like fire types, you know, you're kind of just like out of luck. It does get Stomping Tantrum releases coverage, so I could see the Defiant Ogerpon being pretty strong, right? So going back, I guess I should give my recommended set for this. For this, like you'd probably just do Follow Me, Ivy Cudgel. But Ogerpon, the regular form has kind of its own individual way of like operating, right? So you could give this thing a sash, right? You'd probably run Power Whip if you did that, right? Actually, I guess you could just run Ivy Cudgel because Ivy Cudgel only cares about the mass type. So you have 100 power, 100 accuracy grass type move. And then let's see your coverage moves, right? You get knockoff, you get play rough, you get quick attack, you get stomping tantrum, U-turn. There's a lot of good coverage here actually, so you could get a lot out of your Ogerpon. Obviously being trapped in a Terra Grass kind of sucks, but I think that's still fine. As well too, I think like you can give it an assault vest, right? If you prefer to kind of keep it, you know, specially defensive. It actually is a pretty decent special defense, so it would really be able to take like special hits pretty well. The HP stat isn't like super phenomenal, but if you invest into it, it can be really strong, right? Obviously that come at the cost of your speed, but given the speed tier, I don't actually think you care about like not investing that much speed. The only thing that would be really worth outspeeding would be maybe like a Chi-Yu, right? Or that kind of situation. As well too, you could even run just like a Sash 252 set. You could run a, you know, a couple different things. And I put Protect here on this guy. Spiky Shield is better. But yeah, so there's just like a couple of options. I think it's really sick. So this is, in my opinion, Ogerpon Hearthflame is the best one by far, and that's because of the partners that you can run next to it. So first off, it gets Mold Breaker, and this is really big because we are in a Heatran format, so Heatran is not a reliable switch-in to the fire move now because obviously Heatran doesn't care, right? So that's kind of like the nice thing about Heatran is like, it's like, oh yeah, straight up, like I can just sit there, you know, and take it. There is one funny mechanic I did want to take note of. If Heatran has Ability Shield, it actually, like, Ivy Cudgel does not work on Heatran, so like Heatran hard walls this Pokemon, which is pretty hilarious. Now whether or not people are gonna run it, I don't really think people are gonna run it, but it is pretty funny to just think about, right? So overall, right, like what does this mean for, you know, Ogerpon, right? So it gets an attack boost when it terrestrializes, which is a really big deal. And if you guys don't know, the masks already give a 1.2 boost to all attacks. So if you have like Sunny Day Tornadus with this and you click like Terrifier Ivy Cudgel, it's hitting really hard actually. And like, and not only that, it has a high critical hit ratio, so that's also kind of insane, right? So like you basically get like Stone Edge with 100% accuracy, or I guess in this case like that equivalent in the fire type, and you get that with any of the Ogerpons, right? So that's like kind of sick. I think like that actually makes it like pretty oppressive. Then it can run something like Power Whip, Wood Hammer. This version for sure, in my opinion, always runs next to like Sunny Day Tornadus or something that can enable its damage. I think like that is the kind of like mon that Ogerpon wants to be next to, right? So overall, like it's a pretty cool version. I think it's arguably the best one by far, right? I just think it just has so many options. You can run like other coverage moves like Quick Attack. You can run Stomping if you want to be able to hit Heatran, even if they have like Ability Shield, right? You have a bunch of stuff that you can do with it. So I think Ogerpon like Fire is definitely the best one, and the one like I would expect to see in competitive play the most. Then finally, it's Ogerpon Water. So this one is interesting because it has Water Absorb. So that means it's essentially immune to Surging Strikes from Urshifu, which you can use in a lot of situations. And when it tears into water, obviously, right? Now, Ivy Cudgel and Horn Leech are kind of the main two moves I usually see on this version because it's used more defensively as a Follow Me bot. So pretty much like what it does is it just likes to sit here with Follow Me. It's Wellspring Mass. When you terrestrialize, it gives you a special defense boost, so it's even better as a Follow Me Pokemon. So that's kind of the nice thing about Ogerpon Water. And I think like that's something really strong it can take advantage of. Now, in general, I would say again, like because it's more passive, it's probably like less useful than the fire one. I think by far the fire one is the only one that's really going to make like a huge meta impact. But I do think Ogerpon Water and Ogerpon Grass are still cool and can make a difference. I don't really see the rock one doing much, but I could be corrected. So in general, like what are my thoughts, right? Is Ogerpon a broken Pokemon inherently? Is it not? Which forms are the best? So the best form, in my opinion, is going to be Ogerpon Fire. Ogerpon Fire just gives you a lot of good coverage. You get like Ivy Cudgel, Terra Fire. You get Power Whip or Wood Hammer, whichever you prefer, Stomping, and then Spiky Shield. That coverage is pretty nuts. A Grass Fire type is really nuts. And like the stats it has benefits it a lot. And like even though it's typing, isn't suited to deal with like Urshifu Rapid Strike, you're at least like getting benefits from using it to where it's able to pressure it. Whereas like the rock version, it's getting a defense boost, so it's not really putting on any offensive pressure, right? But because this thing is getting an attack boost, it's putting on offensive pressure, so like it's okay that you're weaker to Urshifu. Also too, Urshifu still only hits you neutral, right? So that's a benefit. So I do think that in general, and Mold Breaker is pretty nuts, right? Like being able to get through abilities is kind of a big deal. That means you could Stomping Tantrum even into like Levitate Mons, right? If you needed to. Or like you can Ivy Cudgel into Heatran. So that's kind of cool, right? Now, overall, like what do I think? So Ogerpon is the best. I think the second best is Ogerpon Water because of the defensive Terra plus, you know, like water's a good defensive type, and then also Follow Me, and Water Absorb, so you can switch into Urshifu Rapid Strike. The third best I'd say is probably Ogerpon regular form. Being able to run different items is really cool. And like you still have really decent coverage, right? And then finally it's going to be Ogerpon Rock as the weakest in my opinion. Even though you get like some rock coverage, it's just I don't think it's like well suited enough into the metagame. Granted, I could be wrong and I could be corrected, but I do think it's the weakest form of all of them. I will say the coolest thing about like the coolest version is probably the fire one, and I've said this a lot. I just think it's the strongest one. And it's probably the one that if you were looking for an Ogerpon to use on your team, I would always recommend using the fire one and then maybe using the water one in a niche situation, right? So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. If you guys have any questions down below, feel free to ask. If you guys have anything you would have liked me to cover that I did not cover, please feel free to let me know as well. And then, of course, I'll be covering more Teal Mask stuff going forward. So let me know what you guys would like to see next. All right, take it easy, guys. Peace.